University's Keller Center, educating leaders for a technology-driven society.
Good evening and welcome to this forum on iPhone apps. It's a forum that's being sponsored by the Keller Center for Innovation in Engineering Education here at Princeton University, by New Jersey Jumpstart, which is a group of individual, what we call angel investors that invest in young companies, and by Drinker Biddle, which is a law firm that works with a lot of young companies. And on the rear of your program, you'll see a description of not only the Keller Center, but also Jumpstart and Drinker Biddle. What we're going to do this evening is to learn about how you can identify a new application for this new platform, the smartphone or the iPhone, and then how you could convert what appears to be an interesting idea into a real application that could be part of a business. So the way in which we're going to do that is learn from people who are doing it and have done it. And we're pleased to have tonight 5 speakers, 3 right here, and 2 in remote locations through a video conferencing facility. Matt Connor, who is on the end, David Lieb, who's in Mountain View, California, Sharon Fordham, who's in Hillsborough, New Jersey, Ken Kay, who's right here with us in the flesh, and Harry Schmidt. And without taking the time to give a lengthy introduction of each individual, I would just refer you to the program where you can read about not only their backgrounds, but the kind of companies that they're developing. My role here this evening is to be a moderator, but it's also to be a student. I must confess that I don't own an iPhone. I know people who do. But I understand that this represents a platform of enormous potential. And so this kind of a session where we can learn from people who are really blazing the trail in a new set of applications and creating enterprises based on those applications can be very valuable. The format that we will use is that I'll ask each of the developers to talk for 5 or 7 minutes about not only their application, but how they conceived of it, how they developed it, how they plan to monetize it, and maybe even talk about the availability of venture capital and investment for these applications and these companies. And then after each of those presentations, we'll have a Q&A session. And because this is being recorded, we'll ask you to use a microphone. So when you have a question and I recognize you, we'll get a microphone to you so that the question can be captured on the video and distributed elsewhere. And I'm going to start this evening by calling on Matt Connor to begin telling about his company.
All right. Can everyone hear me first? Okay, good. So I'm Matt Connor. I'm a student here at Princeton. I'm a junior in the Operations Research and Financial Engineering Department, and I am also the co-founder of iBetics, and together, my brother's the other co-founder. Together, we have developed an application called iLet. Now, iLet's an application that's aimed to help diabetics manage their condition. And I think in understanding how we conceived of the idea and how we developed, it's important to understand just a little bit about diabetes. So we're just going to make sure you bring up to speed on diabetes. So diabetes is a disease that affects a person's ability to produce insulin. And more specifically, iLet's designed to work with type 1 diabetics, which is a chronic medical condition in which the pancreas, for whatever reason, is attacked by the immune system, and the body's no longer able to produce insulin. And insulin's an important hormone in processing sugar. So as you might imagine, for diabetics, it's very difficult after they eat to make sure that their blood sugars stay in a balanced and proper numerical range. Diabetics put themselves at severe risk if their blood sugars go too low of coma, feeling faint, dizziness, and nausea. And if their blood sugars are too high, they run the risk of long-term complications. So for diabetics, it's very important for them to review how much they eat, the insulin that they're administering to themselves, and tracking their blood sugars. Now, the reason that we picked out this area to develop an iPhone application is a little different than probably most people start, in that we actually weren't looking at this as a potential money-making business. I have several family members who are type 1 diabetics themselves, so our primary interest was in helping them have a device to better review their blood sugars and keep track of what they were doing so that in the future they could better manage their diabetes. I also thought that by making this app I could collect some interesting information for a thesis at some point, and I also thought it would be a interesting chance to learn how to program an iPhone app. So our motivation was a little bit different, and of course it was intriguing that we could make money from it, but our primary motivation was a application that would help diabetics manage their condition. Now, our criterion for a good application based on that is one that will actually help them. So not just a logbook that won't help them make better decision, or we weren't looking to make an app that will make the most money. Our idea of a good app for a medical application like this is one that will really serve the purpose to help diabetics. So that's how we came up with the idea. Now, developing it was a little bit tricky because neither my brother nor I have really ever programmed on the Apple platform. We never used Cocoa Touch, and we didn't really know much about Objective-C. So what we had to do is we signed up to be developers with the iPhone program, which is $99, and downloaded a software developer kit, as well as it gives you access to iPhone development docs online. And fortunately, what we were trying to do in making kind of an automated lab book that would let diabetics look back and see what they ate, the insulin that they took, and what their blood sugars were, it's pretty straightforward how we want to do that. We just wanted to capture data, save it, store it, and present it so they could review that. Now, as time's gone on, we've added some functionality in terms of them being able to graph their results, do some analysis based on their blood sugar readings, their food, and their insulin intake, and all sorts of reports like that. But primarily, it was pretty simple for us to develop it, and that we weren't trying to do anything too outrageous. We were just trying to get the results of their management onto a device so that they could look at that and review it. So development for us is pretty simple, pretty easy, but as you might imagine, there's not that many type 1 diabetics. So marketing an application like this has been pretty difficult for us, in that the App Store is a really good place to distribute the app with, I don't know how many people have an iPod Touch exactly. I think it's around 30 million or so. But so lots of people can see the app, but we're targeting a really specific audience. So it's really hard to reach out in the App Store and target those people and say, hey, we have an application that would be really good for you. So the App Store for us is great if you're going to sell a lot, but it's really difficult for us to find the audience that we're targeting. So what we did to kind of try to raise some awareness was we renamed the app a little bit, because within the application store you can search based on content. You can also search the name, so we named it iLet Diabetes Assistant. We talked to various doctors in where I'm from in California, just to tell them if they had any patients who had an iPhone or iPod Touch. But for the most part, we've been pretty grassroots in that we haven't tried to reach out, and that's something that we are working on now, but it's been difficult for us to target our specific audience since it's difficult to find the type 1 diabetics who have an iPhone. Now, with it being hard to find customers, it's obviously hard for us to make a consistent amount of money, since the way the application store works, you buy it once, and then that's all we get from them. So it's pretty difficult with us targeting a pretty small audience to make any sort of ongoing revenue. So the way that we've approached monetizing our iPhone application has been to build a web database that syncs with the iPhone application. Now, there's two reasons we've done that. One is obviously if you sync up the information with a website, then now that's on the website, you can do lots of interesting things in terms of sharing that information. You can share it with doctors, you can review it yourself, you can do more interesting analytics and more powerful analytics on a computer than you can on a pretty small iPod or iPhone. So that was one goal, was just to get the information onto a database so that you can really, onto an online database, so you can really look at your numbers, share that information with other people, and really work with those people to make better decisions managing diabetes. Also by doing that, though, is that you can charge people to sign up to a subscription website. So our approach has been that we're going to get people to download the app. They only download it once, but we need to get a consistent revenue stream. And the way that we've gone about doing that is setting up a website from which for which people sign up, and we have a yearly revenue that we get from each person. Now, lastly, as you might have read in the biography of me, it mentions that we won a significant prize from CIMIT. So for us, looking for outside investors is not something that we've approached yet, just because the money that we've made from winning this CIMIT prize has proven substantial enough that we haven't needed any additional funding, and at this time we haven't been interested in reaching out to those people. However, that money's proven really beneficial to us in that as we go forward here and we keep developing that, we think at some point we will be reaching out to the medical community at large, hospitals, insurance companies, etc., and trying to see that if our system is proven to help improve diabetes care, if we can get them to invest some money and help us really get going. To kind of sum up a little bit, for a medical app like iLet that's targeting a really specific audience, our criterion and the way that we came about the idea was a little bit different. That we were really more worried about developing a good app to help the customer more than make money, which might seem a little backwards, and that a lot of people think money first. But we thought, especially with family members and everything, we were more interested in just developing an application that could actually help people rather than trying to make any money out of this. And going forward from there, we've been pretty fortunate in how it's turned out and how we've received some money from winning the CIMIT prize to continue developing it to a point that now we feel like we can build a way to make some money and continue developing it to even make it better for the customers.
Thank you, Matt. And there's a lesson here that I wasn't aware of your business model, but the notion that an app can create users and data that then can be transferred to a database and shared and monetized in that way. So it's not just a one-time sale, but it can lead to an ongoing revenue stream. Our next developer and CEO is David Lieb, class of 03 from Princeton. He's in Mountain View. David?
Hi, Ed. Yeah, well, hello to everybody. Hope you can hear me okay. Let me know if you can. I am class of 2003. I was an electrical engineering graduate. I will just quickly kind of give you the background story on Bump and what we do and what we're doing next. I'm going to try to do a live demo here over teleconference. We'll see how that goes. Just to give you an idea of what Bump is. Bump is a way to connect to mobile phones by literally just bumping them together. And so our iPhone app, which is out now, allows you to exchange contact information or photographs with other people by literally just bumping your two phones together. And wouldn't you know it, my live demo here has broken. All right, while I try to multitask and do that, I will give you a little bit of the story about how we started with Bump. I was in business school last year at the University of Chicago, and I found myself meeting a bunch of these classmates and being forced to manually type their contact information into my phone. And frankly, I just got frustrated. It was a personal frustration. I looked around and I saw, all these people with these really smart phones that have all of this functionality, and there's no way to connect two phones, with someone that's standing right next to you, and I just thought that was ridiculous. So the idea for Bump really hit me in accounting class one day while I was daydreaming. See, there is important parts to accounting. And That night I emailed a colleague of mine from when I was working as an engineer at Texas Instruments, who happens to also be a Princeton graduate, Andy Hybert's class of 1992. And we started kicking around the idea of how do we build this system? Should we use iPhone? Should we use Android to do a first demo? We chose iPhone mainly because of the number of phones that were out there that we could test this on, and also the development environment. It's very simple. There's one piece of hardware, one software development platform that you can develop on and be sure that it will work on the millions of phones that are already deployed. So we went about building the bump system. I'll give you a bit of a background on how bump actually works. A lot of people think it uses technologies like Bluetooth or other peer-to-peer local technologies, and it does not. Bump actually monitors the accelerometers in the phone, and it literally feels the bump when two phones bump each other. It sends that information up to a server, and our server does this global matching algorithm to figure out which two phones in the world felt the same bump at the same time in the same place. So it's a pretty intricate solution to what should be a very simple problem. So here I'm going to try to do my live demo and see if it will work. Here we go. Apologies for the slowness here. So you guys see, here's one phone running bump, and it allows you to select some information that you'd like to share. And then I will bring this other phone into view here. So what I'll do is I'll just literally bump the two phones together, and in a couple seconds they'll identify each other, and then each user can choose to accept or not to exchange contact information or a photo or anything like that. So we released Bump really just as a test to see if people would engage in this new type of behavior. It's kind of funky when you first think about it, when two people bump their phones together to connect. We released the app at the end of March, and frankly, we were just stunned at how quickly it took off. We got some early press with the Chicago Tribune. That rolled into some more blog posts, and eventually, things started to really take off. One of the differences with Bump compared to other iPhone apps is that, by its nature, it requires two people to interact and to use it. So each person that downloads Bump has an incentive to spread it to his friends so that it becomes more useful for him. So I think that, that aspect of it made it a lot more viral and allowed us to grow early on. At the end of April, we happened to become the billionth app downloaded from the Apple iTunes App Store. So that was a bit of luck that really helped us get onto the national scene, and we got a few national news articles from that, and we kind of leveraged that into more growth. In August, I guess it was, or July, Apple approached us and they wanted to feature us in one of their iPhone commercials. So we did that, and things have really exploded since then, since more people have been aware of Bump. I think now we have about 6 million downloads on iPhone, which is towards the top of all of the iPhone apps that have ever been downloaded. So we're very fortunate there. Moving forward, our plan is to use Bump as a core technology or a core platform to do any type of interaction between two people using your mobile phone. So we're going to add features to the existing Bump application that will make it more useful in a variety of situations beyond just exchanging contact information. We're also going to spread to other platforms. Just last night we released on the Android platform, and we'll be moving to other platforms beyond that as we go forward. But our main goal and our vision is Bump to become the ubiquitous technology that people use when they want to interact using their mobile phone. So Ed asked us to talk a bit about revenue models. We're not actively pursuing revenue at the moment. We have a lot of ideas of how we can monetize this technology and this platform. But really, all of those ideas are predicated on the fact that we become a ubiquitous standard and the way that people connect using their mobile phones. So we're focused first on getting users and usage, and then we will turn on some of these revenue models. But I think that business model or that approach works best for us because we are a business that really relies on becoming a monopoly or a standard. If this market fragments, it's really less valuable to everyone involved. So our first goal is to become that ubiquitous standard. In terms of taking outside investment, we recently closed on a $3 million Series A round led by Sequoia Capital. I think, it was easier for Bump to do that compared to some other iPhone applications. One, because we had a lot of traction in the marketplace. I mean, we have 6 million people actively using Bump all the time. That shows that, one, the technology works, and two, the market is there to a certain extent for usage. And I think the other aspect of Bump that allowed us to have a good fundraising time here is that Bump is a platform technology that can be used for a variety of things. And so each venture capitalist that we pitched, each one of them was able to imagine what the possibilities could be with our technology, rather than us having to explain it to them and have them decide whether they believe us or not. So having an open-ended business like we do, I think, really benefited us there. So I think maybe I'll leave it with that and look forward to answering your questions as we go forward.
Thanks very much, David. Exciting story of a Princetonian out in Silicon Valley after a stop in Chicago doing some very interesting things, and congratulations.
I did get my half MBA from Chicago, so I'm halfway there.
And also congratulations on the financing. The next speaker is Sharon Fordham, and she's speaking to us from Hillsborough, New Jersey. And she's been involved in a wide variety of companies, and I'll just ask her to talk about what she's doing now.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Can you hear me all?
Yeah. Yep, fine.
Okay, great. Yep. Sorry, I was going to be there tonight, but I had a little mishap yesterday. My foot is not done the same, so I'm having a little travel difficulties right now, but thank God for video technology. So you heard about two apps that are in different verticals. They're two applications. The Skyworks company, Skyworks Interactive, is actually a gaming company. It's actually the company that pioneered the general category of aggregating over the years, which is the ability to build advertising into what we call casual games or light games that are generally played, of course, online. We started developing for the iPhone in November a year ago. It's exactly a year it's been out. We have well over 35 apps at this point. And we've had some success on the iPhone. We've been pleased so far. We have a lot more work to do. So far we've had 15 top 100 games. And that's significant because there's over 50,000 games right now available for the iPhone and over 100,000 apps. So just to say, finding something like looking for a needle in a haystack. I'll talk about that in the marketing side in a minute. We've generally been in the top 5 among publishers on the iPhone throughout the time we've been on the phone. 13 million downloads across a number of our games. And we also serve advertising. We're doing about 500,000 to 1 million game sessions per day, about 60 million ad impressions per year. So we're starting to build a pretty significant presence on the iPhone, and that's certainly part of our goal. We also, as David suggested, are starting to take our games to our platform. We will be introducing our first Google phone very shortly. We're coming out with the DSi title very shortly, and we'll be coming out with 4 to 5 TSC Go titles. So our games travel across many platforms, and that is part of the vision of what we have to do. There are a lot of challenges to being on the iPhone, particularly in a very, very competitive category like gaming. Let's face it, we're playing with the giants, with the electronic arts of the world, the gaming arts of the world. And interestingly, though, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, did someone say something? Yeah, okay. Interestingly, though, there are an awful lot of major game developers like Activision and Disney that really have not gotten on the iPhone yet. And that presents opportunities for developers like Skyworks, where if you have great products and you have a breadth of titles and you have the right channels, you become hopefully an attractive acquisition candidate at some point in time. So some of the questions, and by the way, our titles, our verticals are pretty straightforward. We're extremely strong in arcade, we're very strong in the arcade games, we're very strong in the sports games, and we're very strong in family. And that's important because it goes to the heart of how you can market and, kind of the titles you're looking for. It so happens those are strengths of the Skyworks company, and we do hallmark titles like, as an example, ping pong, or now table tennis, World Cup table tennis, which has been a huge success for us. And likewise, arcade hoops, arcade bowling, which you would know is speedball, or speedball type game. And those kind of titles do have a lot of lift, a lot of consumer traction. Some of the questions that we were asked to tackle was how do you conceive a good iPhone app. I'm talking to this question from the standpoint of a developer that has a line of products, not just a single product. So I'm going to come at it perhaps a little differently. We start with looking at our catalog. We have a huge catalog, about 150 games that have been built over the years for online purposes. And so our challenge has been to identify within a large catalog how many titles, what titles we want to translate, and then do a build. We do actually have to do a reasonable amount of work yet to take an existing online title and translate it. The iPhone is Objective-C, that's very different programming language than what our original phones, our original games were built in. So that work has to go on. But at least we have a great core game to start with. One other thing you want to look for is finding and matching your game with the demographic of the machine. And this is an interesting question if you think about channels. The iPhone user tends to be 15, male 15 to 44 or thereabouts. So kiddie titles, as an example, don't do as well. They're just not a big category because younger children don't generally have iPhones or even necessarily iPhones. Some do, of course, but generally speaking, that's not the case. But if you go to a device like the DSi, or any of the Nintendo handheld or Sony handheld, Nintendo in particular tends to be younger. So titles that might not do well on the iPhone may well have a chance of doing well on the DSi. And so be very mindful as you're developing who it is you're developing for, make sure you match the program of your app to the need of that user. In our case, we also have the luxury of having been in many different sites and having been able to track the traffic to each of our games when we presented many games on the website, like Portal, for example. And so we have the luxury of being able to look and see what's done before and what titles have done really well, and support really strong titles, and then be a little bit more cautious about the titles that have been lower traffic in our prior experience. And then the last thing I would suggest is that you want to spend some time thinking about what your strengths are as a developer, what you bring to the party, and stick to those strengths. Don't try to do something just because you feel like it's the right way to go. Unless you can acquire the capability, you may be disappointed that you can't actually deliver what you're saying. I mean, in our particular case, as I said, we have done very well in arcade, sports, and family type of titles. But we've also tried areas like action, which is not a core strength of the Skyworks company, and we haven't done particularly well. And in puzzle, we've had a mixed experience. Puzzle category is a very big category. It's one we want to do better in, we want to have more presence, but we've got a long way to go before we do there what we've done in some of the other verticals. So just know what you're good at and make sure you leverage that and try to find the best presentation of that in the application. Another question was posed is what are the characteristics of a good application and what criteria should be applied to determine whether the app will have potential to do well or not. This is a wide open question, and I'm sure many people can and should weigh in on it. In our experience, the number one thing, and to be honest, it's not terribly different than any other category. The number one thing is you have to have a great product. And you just really don't see in the top 100 games too many two-star rated games. Generally speaking, they're 3, 3.5, 4. I've seen an occasional 4.5 that's very, very unusual. You never see a 5. But 3.5 and 4 is kind of the standard for getting in and staying in the top 100 among games. Secondly, to my point earlier, to the extent you can, pick a larger segment, because the bigger the segment, the bigger the consumer interest in your type of game or app. And if you have a choice between playing in a smaller segment or playing in a bigger segment, there will be a volume difference depending on which you choose. Another thing you might want to be mindful of if you're thinking about what type of app you want to do or what type of game, in our case, you'd like to do, is pay attention to the number of direct competitors. In gaming, because of the sheer number of games, in almost any game you can think of, there are direct competitors. And it could be many, many competitors. If there's a large number of competitors, it's going to be very hard to break through, even with a little bit of application. And if there are a limited number, your chances are better, and you can do things to enhance your game vis-a-vis the competition. As an example, when we introduced arcade bowling, which again is a speedball type of game, we could have just done a more traditional arcade presentation. You all play the game; it's a favorite for everyone. But we actually put laser lighted speedballs or bowling balls for the alleys, and we put in all kinds of neon and electrical sort of effects that created a very exciting application, and it's a very, very popular app and has been since we launched it in December of last year, consistent top 100 performance. All that said, there's still this uncomfortable feeling of there's no easy predictor of what it is that's going to make a great application, a great game. And to some extent, it is a little bit of a law of large numbers exercise. You're going to try a few things, and some people work. Sometimes you get lucky, and it's that very first app. But over the course of 10 apps, if you go that direction, and try to create a portfolio of applications, you're going to have your challenges trying to possibly pick the next big hit. And just a few other things. Just want to scroll down here for a minute. On the marketing side, I'll talk to that. That's kind of my area. How do you create awareness for new apps and how are apps distributed? Well, the first comment is, unfortunately, it's becoming increasingly difficult to create awareness because there's just an enormous amount of competition in the iPhone app store. I don't know if all of you are aware of this, but within the last few days, Apple just hit, within about a year and a half of launching the App Store, they say that there's billions downloads. And now they're up, and they just hit the milestone of 100,000 apps in the App Store. That's a monumental amount of competition. We go into a grocery store, and with my background, I can tell you, there might be 40,000 items on the shelves of a grocery store, and they're in all different categories. Imagine 100,000 items in a grocery store, and maybe the equivalent of 10 or 15 categories. I mean, it's mind-boggling. But there are things you can do. One is try and brand your application, your game. We actually put the Skyworks branding on every icon that we put out in the marketplace, and our users come to look for it. And when we launch new games, we push it out to them in terms of awareness of the new game, and we get a lot of uptake as a result of it. They value the Skyworks brand. They have expectations of what the Skyworks brand is going to be. And if the game doesn't meet those expectations, they tell us, believe me. Online advertising within iPhone ad networks is certainly viable, and that's being done pretty poorly by everybody. We have, again, very large Skyworks community, 13 million downloads, and growing quite rapidly each day. We market to our users pretty aggressively, and we get a lot of uptake on new titles as a result. So we're very efficient in how we go to market. But other things, reviews, getting out to the reviewer community, the launch community is huge, and you have to have an active program to reach out and to interest those users. Releases of changes in your applications. Actually, the major way, interestingly, is reconnecting with your users, with new users who maybe didn't have a phone when you first introduced the application, but do now. When you make a change in an application, you add a feature as an example, you get release exposure for a day or so, and believe it or not, you'll see volume as a result of that. Pricing, a lot of pricing flexibility. Apple will change pricing instantly at your will. That's a great thing. ECRM, email marketing is usually important. And getting to know your community and finding who your users are, to do that is very valuable.
Sharon, thank you for the insights, and I know you've probably raised some questions in the minds of people, especially on this marketing, but what I found particularly interesting is the concept of transporting existing content to the iPhone, but making sure that the demographics of the target customers are those that are iPhone users, and that was a very useful insight. The next speaker is Ken Kay, and Ken, he's been an entrepreneur, but he's been an angel investor for many, many years, and now after being on the sidelines as an investor with the Jumpstart Network and a leader of the Jumpstart Network, is back on the playing field of building a company. So tell us about it, Ken.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, I think my background is probably a little bit different in that I've been in the software company development business for a long time. The first company I built up and sold to Microsoft. Joanne Pinter is here. Joanne was one of the early employees at ebudgets.com before we grew it and sold it to Microsoft. She recently left Microsoft to join Dow Jones. But with my experience in software development, business development, and angel investing, you were probably going to expect that I arrived at this idea, this approach, this business with the experience of many trials, many failures as well as successes. Well, it turns out the main reason I got into this was because of Joan. Joan, would you please stand up? Joan is my friend, and she and I, about a year ago, after I got an iPod for my software development team at the company I was helping out with, I became fascinated with the iPod and started thinking about different sustainable businesses that you could create. Now, at the time, and it's largely true today, most of the apps that you download are throwaway apps, and this is by no means discrediting what Sharon has done in building a very impressive business on the game side, but I certainly don't have a background in gaming, and so I was thinking about a way to build something that would appeal to a target audience in such a way that I can create a sustainable model, and that was not an easy thing to do. Now, because Joan is in the arts world in Philadelphia, she and I talked about various ideas that might make sense for nonprofit arts organizations. And this, I think, would violate all of the rules that I've developed as an angel investor, and that is targeting a market that has absolutely no money is not a good idea to build a business. At the same time, I had in Joan a connection into that market, and through the contacts, a good understanding of what might appeal to them. So I started exploring that area, mainly to just get into the game. I had heard about the iPhone party, and I didn't want to miss out. So I wanted to get into the game to figure out what the right questions are. Often, you don't really know what the issues are until you get into it. So I wanted to develop an app, get it into the App Store, and see where the journey would take me. So I had absolutely no business model, no real faith that this would end up as a real business, but I wanted to do it because it was cool technology. So the first thing I did was I tried to figure out how to develop the app with limited resources. I wasn't about to throw a lot of money at this. I looked at outsourcing to China, and after working with this programmer for about a month, I realized that he didn't know very much. And so at that point, I was in a dilemma. iPhone app developers were very hard to find, and if you could find one, they would probably not stay with you for very long because they could be stolen by someone else. What's the solution? I asked my son, who is here. David, stand up. David is a part-time student, a full-time gamer, and a part-time programmer for EC, the company I'm creating. So as you can see, this is more like a ma and pa operation than a real business. But nevertheless, I'm very excited about its potential. And let me explain some of the things I've learned along the way, some of the key questions that I have wrestled with. The main problem in an iPhone app is not in development, it's in marketing. It's not easy to get a good iPhone developer, but marketing is becoming an astronomical challenge for the reasons that Sharon talked about. The number of apps out there, the sheer amount of chaos and noise in this marketplace. So either you have to have a lot of money, or you have to come up with a viral strategy that will resonate and catch fire somehow. And in the arts world, I believe I found an opportunity to do that. And here's why. While they might not have money, what they do appreciate is the technology. They would like to get on the mobile platform to reach their audience and possibly connect with a younger market that would then be their future donors. The fact that they don't have money means that they are constantly promoting themselves. So what I'm trying to do now is to develop a strategy whereby for the nonprofit arts world, it's a free app. They can get their content, and I should explain what the app does in a minute, but they can use this to get a presence on the iPhone store, reach their audience, and possibly get more contributions to their cause. The app itself is a platform which takes content and puts it into a format that can be a mobile guide to an arts festival. It could be a mobile magazine or a newspaper. It's very open-ended, and through the web portal, the users and organizations can put their content out there, at which point anybody with an iPhone can get access to their content. Now, that can be done either as an EC app, which is what the app is called, or a private label version, which is appropriate for larger organizations. So whereas the app itself is not really sustainable by itself, but with the content and the promotional backing of arts organizations, I hope that it can reach a much larger audience than I can possibly do with my own resources. So I'm trying to take advantage of the nonprofit arts world, both in Philadelphia as well as the rest of the country, initially in Philadelphia, to get the message out and to, in effect, sell the shovels to the gold miners. Rather than look for gold, sell the shovels. That's basically the approach that I'm taking.
Thank you, Ken, and it really does come in handy, doesn't it, to have a son that can do this? That's a wonderful story. Harry, tell us your story.
Well, I could just start out by saying that I began my life in programming as one of the sons in one of these sort of father-son operations. But my project operates on a very different level from the other applications that you've heard about today, in part because they are really just tools for academics. They're research tools, and there's absolutely no possible hope of any meaningful monetization of these applications. Because what money is there in academics? Anyway, my applications are called Lexidium and Lexiphanes, and what they are simply dictionary search tools for the ancient Greek and classical Latin languages. I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate in classical studies here at Princeton University, and my day job is that I study ancient Greek tragedy and then try to teach it to undergraduates. My applications began with me sort of saying to myself, there's got to be a better way of doing this. On a trip to Italy, a little bit more than a year ago, my wife, who's also a classicist, was engaged in a program in Rome taught by the Pope's Latin secretary, which is kind of esoteric for people who want to learn to speak Latin. At any rate, the one textbook that the students were expected to bring with them to Italy was this very ancient, very venerable, and very, very large dictionary, the Lewis and Short Latin Dictionary. Now, I already knew that this dictionary has long since been put in machine-readable format, XML format, because it's in the public domain and made available for free download, but not very many tools have been developed that actually take advantage of that facility. And so I said to myself, there's got to be a better way for my wife to learn to speak Latin than to be wandering around baking in the Roman sun in the middle of July, carrying around a 20-pound dictionary. At the time, we didn't yet have iPhones. We had a Windows mobile device, so I tried to develop a dictionary tool for Windows Mobile, and what I found was that it's extremely difficult to do anything meaningful on the Windows Mobile platform. The tools for development are all either difficult to obtain or extremely expensive, and we ended up developing a very, very simple dictionary search tool before we left, but it wasn't necessarily all that useful. You simply type a word in, and eventually, many minutes later, you get a response back. So I said to myself, there has to be an easier way of doing this. When we got back from our trip, I began looking into the iPhone platform as a place to develop research tools of this type. And what I found was that Apple had made it so simple for a single part-time developer like myself to create useful, practical, and helpful tools. Now, for those of you who don't know exactly how the iPhone application development platform works, you've heard already that you pay about $100 and you're given access to Apple's software development kit, which you have to run from a Macintosh, but it provides all the tools, all the resources you'll need. There's plenty of documentation on how to use the SDK, the software development kit. And what I found was that it was very, very welcoming. I'm an experienced programmer. I did not know the Objective-C programming language when I got started, but it was very simple to learn. And in the space of about 3 months, I went from having the idea and having developed it already on Windows Mobile to having a useful and practicable tool for the iPhone. Distribution for a tool like this is an incredibly difficult thing to manage, of course, because you're trying to look for two very comparatively small subsets of people, iPhone, iPod Touch owners on the one hand, people who are interested in classical languages on the other. Not very large target demographics. My user base numbers in the thousands rather than the millions. So what I found in terms of marketing and as an academic is that word of mouth works actually very well, and social networking works even better, because the people who have iPhones, the people who are likely to get a type of tool like this, are also the people who are using Twitter, are using Facebook, all of the new social networking tools of our era. So I found simply that through judicious application of these tools, create a page on Facebook, create word-of-mouth things like that, it became very simple to get people actually downloading and using these dictionary tools. And the result is that I have now many thousands of people not only using these dictionaries but giving back, in that it's possible for them to, because these dictionaries, when they were made machine readable, it was all done automatically, and there were sometimes errors in the computer's transcription, made it possible for people to edit entries for words and send their changes back up to the cloud. So I've actually been able to get a lot of help in terms of cleaning these dictionaries up and making them more usable for everyone. And then I can simply send those back down in application updates on the iPhone. So, as a one-man dog and pony show and kind of a single part-time developer, what I can say is that Apple has made it so simple for people like me to do what they do, to create a little bit of value that a couple of people will find useful, that a few thousand people will be able to find useful, but to do it very quickly, to do it for very little initial outlay of capital, of money, or time resources. To that extent, I think that really is where the potential of the iPhone and the iPod Touch platform is that it's just so simple to develop and distribute that even a single little academic guy like me can get a lot of traction for a couple of tools that you might have thought were very niche items. But in that respect, I think I've been able to do very well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Harry. One of the things that I noticed, and you probably did too, is how many of these applications came from a personal need. Matt and Ken Harry and to a large extent David as well, where they saw a need and then developed the application because they recognized that that need would be shared, maybe not by everyone in the world, but by a large number of people to make it interesting. Now it's your time to ask questions of any or all of the panelists, and we have a microphone that will enable your question not only to be heard by the audience, but to be recorded in the video. And there's a question, I hate to have you running way up and way back, Cornelia, but I'm going to recognize the gentleman in the rear there to ask the first question.
This is a question for Mr. Pei. You left us hanging because you said there's a great way to hold on to iPhone developers, and I don't think you followed up on that. So
yeah,
what did you asked your son, and what did he say?
He I didn't give him much choice in the matter, but yeah, I guess he could be bribed to work for somebody else. I just felt that I had a little bit more leverage with him, given that I'm paying his college tuition, than with the off-the-street programmer.
Other questions? Yes, right here. Cornelia can maybe hand. Where? Oh, that you, and then you'll be next. Okay.
My question is for David. You did Y Combinator. Can you comment on that? And was that a good experience for you?
Hey, could you repeat that for me?
Sure. You did Y Combinator, I believe. Is that correct? Can you comment on that?
Is the question, what's the question about it?
The question had to do, David, with being either as part of or near Y Combinator.
Right. Well, yeah, we were part of the most recent Y Combinator batch. For those of you who aren't familiar with Y Combinator, it is a very seed stage investment firm, kind of like a startup incubator or accelerator program. They basically give, $20,000 of investment to typically, young people who have ideas, and they spend the summer developing those ideas and seeing what they can make of them. Being a part of YC was really a fantastic experience for us. We moved out to the Bay Area because this is kind of the hub of technology and where we need to be to get employees, to get investors, and things like that. Being a part of YC really helped connect us to the network that we needed to recruit from, to get ideas from. So it's this kind of network of innovative software developers that really helps a lot.
Next question, I think right here in the. It's a little awkward. Thanks, Cornelia.
Hi, this question is for David. I was wondering. Bump seems to have a client-server model. Was there a technical reason why you couldn't do a peer-to-peer model? Or was it because Bluetooth was not available at the time, or some other reason?
Okay, so the question is about Bluetooth, I think I heard. Yes, the reason, we don't use Bluetooth, there's a couple reasons. One reason is that, Bluetooth is a technology that works great for what it was intended for, which is, making connections to peripheral devices like Bluetooth headsets and things like that. It's actually a very core technology for these types of, quick connections between two devices that might not have been paired previously. You look at Apple's implementation of Bluetooth, and Apple, is the one company that can do things, with the best user experience. And their Bluetooth implementation really isn't that good. Taking Bluetooth and having one phone connect to a phone on a different network or a different handset manufacturer and having Bluetooth be that connection is nearly impossible. So we decided that we wouldn't rely on a hardware solution. We would create a software solution that could do the same thing with the standard hardware that the hardware stack and the particular chipset in the phone didn't really matter.
Question? Right here.
My question could actually be for any of you guys. My question, I'm new with Apple and kind of this app thing. How do you guys figure out cost? Does Apple do they buy your app, or do you make so much cents on the dollar for everything that sends? Or do you guys, and then also, how do you decide what to sell it for? Because most of them are 99 cents, and then, there's some that are, $2.99. My question is just how you go, how you began kind of in that realm.
Sharon, could you take that question of, the mechanics of dealing with Apple in order to market or sell, distribute the product?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, you set your pricing. Apple does not. And I will just actually back up for a second because kind of interesting. Especially on the gaming side, where there's long been some history of monetizing apps developed by game companies. In the past, it was a very, very tiny amount of return for the development costs of online gaming. And Apple actually created a breakthrough by actually giving developers a 70% cut of revenue share of every game they produced and developed and ported to the iPhone. So basically, you set your price, and whatever the price is that you set, you keep 70%, Apple keeps 30% for the distribution, and to some degree, we're in creation for your application. And as far as how you set the price, again, there are no many rules. There are no firm rules. And the only firm rule is you can get whatever the market will bear. But oftentimes, if there's no competition, you have a lot of latitude. But where you do have competition, you have to be mindful of whether you think you're so much better that you can price above the range of established competitors, or if there's already so many, even if you have great applications, you may have to still come in under that in terms of price. And also, there's a model, frankly, out there which is no price at all, a totally free application driven by advertising. And that is becoming more and more viable. I'm not sure it's fully viable yet, but the ad market is starting to recover, and the iPhone space, from an advertising perspective, is actually quite hot. So in our case, we actually do both. We get transactional revenue for the purchase of a paid application, and then for many of our apps, we also do a light version, which is a partial treatment of the full paid application, and that carries advertising. We've been making money off those titles as well. So there's many different approaches, but if you can, get everything the market will bear, but that is ultimately going to be the guidance for you, I think.
Thank you. A question down here? Here, maybe even got it.
Thank you. I want to direct this to Harry and to others. Yes, I'm interested in the opportunity with the way the store works, and I don't know much about a subscription to an application. And also, if not a subscription, are there version updates for which you can get additional revenue? And is that attractive in terms of the history so far?
Well, so in terms of updates to the application, what you find is that Apple distributes those to users for free. So if you end up adding like a bunch of new features in what you say is simply a revision of an existing application, your existing user base gets all of that new functionality for no money. So you can either spin off the application or into a deluxe version of what you already had. What Apple just introduced in version 3.0 of the iPhone OS software is a facility called in-app purchasing, where you can actually there's a mechanism by which you can actually let users purchase items from within the application and an outlay of additional money. To the extent that you could, say, allow an application to be downloaded free, but then have premium content inside the application that they have to pay additional money in order to access. That could be used as part of a subscription service on the iPhone. There are, I would say that would be the cheapest way of doing it, at least from the the one-man point of view like me.
Harry, when you have that premium content, it's purchased, is the purchaser purchasing it directly from you, or does it go through Apple?
No, that again goes through the Apple system, the Apple their coffers, with the result that again they take their 30% cut of anything that you sell, you happen to sell that way. But at the same time, they're handling all aspects of payment, to the extent that you don't have to become a credit card processor or handle any aspect of the payment side of things on your own. So there's a trade-off there, but for a small developer like me, that is so much better than actually having to go out and manage payment myself.
Question here.
The question is actually two parts. The first part is, given that there's, and it's to anyone on the panel, that there are about 100,000 applications, whether or not if something is very similar or a replica to something that exists out there, if there is any sort of patent or copyright issues, as long as you do the programming yourself. And second of all, if you're linking up any of those applications to something that's on the web, so for example, what Harry, you're linking it up to information that was specifically on the web itself, if there are any issues from a legal standpoint or a copyright standpoint that Apple monitors, or somebody else comes and says this application has to be taken off.
Anybody want to take a shot at the copyright and protection issues?
Yeah. I can. I've had a fair amount of experience with it. One thing you didn't mention and should be mentioned, and one of the challenges for a new developer or for any developer on the iPhone, is that Apple fully expects that you will own or have full licenses for all the IP in your games, in your applications. In other words, you own its original work, or you pay someone for pieces of it. In our case, with respect to games, music has to be paid for, or a license, art has to be paid for, a license, or created originally. There are any of the touches that we have in our games, that has to all be accounted for. And Apple, if they're challenged, will take the game or the application right down. They won't even spend 3 seconds having a debate about it. It's up to the developer to honor the IP considerations in their work, and to resolve them if in fact there's a problem. So it's very important you tend to that before you actually take your application out to the market.
Other questions, and it better not be for David, because it looks like he's vanished from the scene. Way in the rear, and I'll just walk up here and hand it to Mike.
My question's for Matthew. Why not target type 2, since that's the larger demographic?
That's a pretty good question. We are thinking about expanding to the type 2 demographic, however, just that my brother and I were so much more familiar with the type 1 demographic that we felt as our initial applications, we were learning how to build the application and everything, since we understood the ins and outs of type 1 diabetes a little bit better, we wanted to target type 1 diabetes. Now, obviously it'd be much better for us in terms of revenue and reaching to more customers if we did develop it for type 2 diabetics, which is something that we're moving towards. But the main reason we didn't do it is just we weren't familiar with treatments of type 2 diabetes nearly as well as we are with type 1.
An additional question?
Click on no.
While we're waiting for the microphone to get up there, I might just add on to what Matt said. I think this is one of the biggest and most important lessons to know about iPhone application development early on is don't try to do too much, because if you end up making a huge outlay of effort into an application that no one ends up using, and you've wasted how much of your life doing it. I think it's highly useful simply to think about what you know and then to implement that, but do it very well. You'll be much more successful that way.
So it seems like a lot of the best-selling apps, a lot of the growth in the Apple app platform is social apps, gaming apps, and that seems like kind of a contrast to a lot of the growth, say like originally with the personal PC, driven by the productivity software, business applications. I'm wondering if people have opinions if that's going to change on the Apple platform, or is it more because BlackBerry is kind of more of the business mobile device?
Ken, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. My expectation is that the Apple platform and its imitations will become much more significant in the business realm over the next few years. Yeah. So I was just saying that my expectation is that the platform, the Apple as well as the Google Android and probably some version of the BlackBerry Storm will become a very popular platform for business applications going forward. My personal focus has never been in gaming, so I have a little bias there in that statement, but I'm trying to get positioned so that I can take advantage of the move toward productivity, business type applications before it really starts taking off.
I'm going to take the prerogative of the moderator and ask the last question of each of you, and I'm going to start with you, David. Welcome back. Can you hear us okay?
I can, yeah. Sorry, I dropped out there for a minute.
Look into the crystal ball, and I imagine everyone's thought a little bit about this, but what's this industry going to be like in 5 years? Would this be like a million little proprietorships and individual companies, or do you envision that there may be some major companies that develop out of iPhone applications?
Well, I certainly hope it's the latter. But, I would say that a lot of the buzz out here in Silicon Valley, at least, is drawing comparisons between kind of the current buzz with the application store, all of the new mobile platforms, comparing that to what it was 10 years ago with the internet boom. And I think there are, parts of that comparison are pretty valid. What Apple and Android and these other platforms have done is kind of, open up this new form of distribution to allow, people with an idea to go and hit, millions of people with their ideas, which is exactly the same thing that the internet did 10 years ago. So, I think it will probably shake out in a very similar way to the way that the internet has, in the sense that, there are some pretty dominant players that will emerge, but there's still room for, small companies and small developers to still have an impact.
Matt, do you have some thoughts about that?
I would agree with what David's saying, in that I think it's it's going to continue a little bit how it is now, and that you're going to have big companies like Skyworks and others like that, but just the way that Apple's made the platform, how easy it is to develop an app or a specific app like Harry or I have done that target a specific audience, I think that there's always going to be small developers and small companies who can easily get into the market, and might not cut out a big market share and have as much revenue as some of these other companies, but I still think that the way the platform's built, there's going to be a pretty wide variety of the size of companies involved.
Ideal for entrepreneurs, right? Harry?
I think that what Apple has done for the smartphone development universe is to make it, or bring it about as close to the development process for a standard personal computer as it's ever going to get. To the extent that, you have kind of room for both universes. You have the little academics like me who go out and build a tool that'll be useful to some people and put in a, commensurately small amount of time and money effort. And then there will be, much larger opportunities for, for bigger killer apps and games, social networking, that type of stuff. And then I think those types of markets, will tend to be dominated by, the larger companies that have the large amounts of capital, the resources to develop those things quickly. And that's going to be the big thing about the iPhone application universe, is that because part of what happens because it's so easy to develop is that there's going to be a massive turnover in terms of just tons and tons and tons of applications being written and available, to the extent that what might be the great and cool thing one day might next week be kind of old and busted. So the speed of the development universe is going to make it difficult, I think more difficult for a larger, slower company to be able to react to changes in the market. My colleagues up there might disagree with me. But.
And Ken, you can probably look at this both as an investor as well as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I am a little bit wary. I won't say skeptical because I'm optimistic, but I'm wary that this market is going to remain fragmented for a long time. Now, that's good for people starting out, but if you become an established player, you'd love to be able to consolidate your gains and become a giant. But given the current structure of the market, I rather doubt it, especially on the iPhone platform where 30% is going to Apple, and that doesn't sound like a lot for what they offer, the ease of distribution, the payment, and so on. But to get to be a big company with a lot of leverage in the market, trying to get through that Apple funnel is not a good way to do business. Now, on the Android, maybe, because that's completely open-ended. But given the structure of the iPhone market, I don't think there's going to be one dominant software player. It's going to remain very fragmented over the next 10 years.
And Sharon, I will give you the last word on what the industry looks like from your vantage point.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm in between, I think, with all these points of view. I think in certain categories, it could stay more fragmented for a while. I do think there'll be consolidation in every category to some degree. And gaming, I will tell you, I think there's going to be major consolidation in the not-too-distant future because even EA and GameLoft, which are two gigantic gaming companies around the world, enormous in size, billions and billions in sales, they still have very, very small footprint within the total gaming market. Just as a little aside, what Apple is doing Apple is doing gaming right now what it did with music. It's taking what was a $20 purchase at one time for a music CD and turning it into the 99-cent purchase of the one song you actually wanted. They're doing the same thing now in gaming, which creates a lot of dislocation. People are accustomed to buying $59.99 titles for their Xboxes, the Wii, and so forth. And now it's turned into 99 cents and $1.99 purchases for the same game. So therefore, all the gaming companies are rethinking, but I do think you're going to see a lot of consolidation so they can get critical mass and get their leadership positions established. It's going to be very interesting over the next year or two. Smaller categories or business categories, others. If there's no big player to jump in, I think it will be an indie opportunity. But if you have big players in categories, they're going to eventually, I think, get very interested in and probably buy up. A lot of the independent developers who are around today. So it's a good news story for developers for sure.
Sharon, thank you, and I hope you heal quickly and get around. And thanks, David, and all of our panelists and all of you, and particularly our sponsors for making this happen. We have a reception that is available right outside, and in addition, there are some cards. They're sort of postcard-sized cards that you may have seen. This announces a contest for an application where the deadline is next March. But if you're a student, graduate student, or undergraduate student, and you're interested in developing an application, this has to do with the alcohol.
Thank you.